Out. Today we're going to be walking through GulpJS. GulpJS is a JavaScript task manager. I'm just going to open up the GulpJS website and then we'll discuss some of the key features of the GulpJS task manager. So what exactly is GulpJS? GulpJS is a task manager for JavaScript, which allows you to automatically execute tasks during your development process. So what this means is that you have the ability to automatically execute build processes while you are in the act of development. So there's four main components to GulpJS. And if we hop over to their documentation page, we can discuss those. So the four main components of GulpJS is Gulp Source, Gulp Destination, Gulp Task, and Gulp Watch. Let's go ahead and walk through each of these, and then we can talk about some of the really neat and exciting things that you can do with GulpJS. So I'm going to go to my terminal. Let's clean this up. And I'm currently just in a Gulp folder, and let's go ahead and let's make a new code repository. So I'm going to create a new package JSON by typing in npm init, and I could enter in information about this package, but we're just gonna take all the defaults of nothing. Great, and if I list, I can now see that I have package.json. Great. So now let's go ahead. In fact, instead of me putting this into this gulp directory, let's create a new directory called gulp intro. And I'm just going to move this package.json file into gulp intro. And now let's cd into gulp intro. All right, awesome. Now I already have gulp installed on my machine globally, so I can test that by just typing in gulp -- version, and there you can see I have gulp 3.9.1, or the CLI version at least. So that's great. That means I already have gulp installed. If I did not have gulp install, gulp is one of those things that, one of the rare items that I'd recommend installing globally on your machine, because you likely are going to want to have that available to start off in most of your projects. However, if you do not have it, you could install it globally by just doing gulp, npm install and -g, -g gulp, and it's going to perhaps upgrade. Let's take a look. Looks like it maybe updated some packages, though I don't think it actually updated anything. Nope, we're still on CLI version 3.9.1. Okay, cool. So now let's go ahead and get started on building out a packet or a code repository real quickly, and then I can show you some of the awesome advantages of using Gulp. And feel free to ask any questions in the chat pod. I will try to monitor it when possible. And right now we don't have any questions. Okay. So now I have Visual Studio Code installed, which means I can trigger that just by typing in code dot, and now it's going to open up in this current folder, so in the gulp intro folder. So I can see here I'm in the gulp intro directory. Let's go full screen on this. And now let's build a really simple website. So let's start off with a new file. We're going to call this index.html, and index.html. Oh no, I don't want it there. Okay. Let me just X out of this and create a new file here, and we'll call it index.html. Let's get rid of that welcome screen, and I have a snippet that gives me a really basic HTML5 template, and it also references this Bulma CSS, which is just a little bit, it's the CSS framework that I enjoy working with, just to stylize it a little bit. And let's go ahead and let's create a container. In fact, let's have it be a Bulma container. And now if I wanted to, I could take a look at this web page by copying the path, going to my browser, and that's weird. It's trying. I can see that it's trying because I've got the title, Hello Bulma, Hello Bulma. Why is it not displaying? Let's go to Chrome. Let's try this in Chrome, shall we? Oh, it says there's a proxy tunnel. That's right. I have a proxy on. It's early in the morning. There it goes. No more proxy stuff. Okay. Cool. So I was working with the proxy yesterday and I forgot to turn it off. All right. So this is my really basic Bulma page. You can see that there's some styling on here. We have this little notification. Basically, I just wanted to show that I have a basic HTML page. So let's hop back over into our code base. And what we need is, if I make a change to this, for instance, let's say is primary, I then have to reload, and I've changed the background of that notification. And while it's okay that I had to reload that, there is a better way. In fact, wouldn't it be nice if whenever I made changes to this index page, if all of a sudden those changes would just appear on my browser? So with GulpJS and with the plugin Browser Sync, you can do exactly that. So let's go ahead and create a gulp file, which will allow us to serve up this updated index.html in our browser automatically whenever a change occurs. So I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it gulpfile.js. And before we even get started on building out this gulp file. Let's go back into our terminal. Or one of the nice things about Visual Studio Code is if I just drag this up, there. It's dragging the entire window. I just wanted to drag this little lower bar up. You can see that there's this terminal tab right in here. You drag up the bottom bar, and so now I can actually just use the bash terminal right inside of VS Code. So I can actually npm install -- save dev, and let's just save a local version. Uh-oh. Well, looks like I can't have the same name as my package.json. So let's open up the package.json. Let's change this name to gulp intro. Now let's try this again. So I'm just going to hit the up arrow to get this previous command. So it's now npm install -- save dev gulp. And now I'm just installing a local version of gulp. And you can see here that I have gulp being saved as a development dependency and automatically updated in my package.json. Cool, that's what we want. Now the other package that I need to install to make this auto browser update work is, is one called browser sync with a dash in between them. Now let's give that a second to install. Now, while that's installing, let's go to the browser sync web page as well. So if I just do a Google search for browser sync, here's the npm page for browser sync, and it links to the main page, but I can also check out the GitHub repo, make sure that everything's up to date. It's also referring to this browsersync.io, and browser sync is awesome. It's really fantastic. You can see some pretty big players in the industry are using it, and it's by far and away one of the most popular live reload mechanisms that is in common use today. Okay, let's go and see if our installation is completed. Awesome, it has. Now let's go ahead and go back to the GulpJS file that we were working on. And for our GulpJS file, we're just going to start off with var gulp equals require, and we're going to require gulp. Great. And next, we're going to require browser sync equals require browser-sync. So, for anyone who is not familiar with the require command word, and let me quickly explain what's happening here. What we've done is, using the command line, we've installed two packages. One package is a local version of this Gulp library, and the other package is a local version of this browser sync module or library. These have been installed inside of this node modules directory, which gets installed um, based off of what we have in our package.json file. So our package.json file says this package of Gulp intro uses browser sync and Gulp, and npm, or the node package manager, it's automatically identifying all of the different libraries that browser sync relies on and all of the different libraries that Gulp relies on, and it's installing them all inside of node modules. So this node modules directory, if I scroll down, there's going to be one directory that's called Gulp, and there it is, Gulp. And if I open up Gulp's package.json, you can see that it's listing out all of these different dependencies that the Gulp package JSON or Gulp package relies on. So things like orchestrator and tildify and all these other ones that we're really not going to get into in this conversation, but npm is going to install all of these additional packages. So that's why this node modules directory is so big. It's because not only is it installing just the modules that we are explicitly saying, hey, I want Gulp and I want browser sync, it's also installing all of the modules that those particular modules are referencing in their dependency files. So that's why if I scroll even further down, there's going to be an orchestrator. Where are you, orchestrator? Here you are, orchestrator. So even though I never explicitly in my own package.json file said, hey, I need the orchestrator module, since Gulp has that listed as a dependency, then it's going to install orchestrator. And I'm sure orchestrator also has a lot of dependencies. And so that's why, even though we've only asked for 2 modules, it's actually installing a ton of modules, because each of those modules have their own dependencies, and then those dependencies have dependencies. It all becomes very much like Inception, a dream within a dream, or packages within packages within packages. And let's do a quick check. No questions. Cool. All right. Now, let's go back to our GulpJS file. So, previously, I mentioned that there was 4 primary functions from GulpJS. There's Gulp source, Gulp destination, or dest, Gulp task, and Gulp watch. We're going to start off with this Gulp task. Now, our Gulp task, there we go. Our Gulp task takes 3 parameters. The first parameter is the task name, and that needs to be a string. So in this case, we're going to call it the serve task. The second parameter is an optional parameter, and that is, you can actually list all of the dependency tasks that you want to complete prior to this. That's an optional one. So we could have a lot of different tasks. Maybe one task handles dealing with HTML files, and another task handles dealing with CSS files, and another task handles dealing with JavaScript files. And if we wanted all of those tasks to complete before executing this serve task, then I could list those as an array, basically saying, hey, run my HTML task and run my JavaScript task and run my CSS task. We are not going to have any dependencies. This is our first task for now. So we're going to put in our third parameter, which is going to be a function. So this is basically when I call the gulp task serve, I want to do something. Now, I'm a big believer in making small changes to your project and then testing those changes while you develop. So the very first thing that I want to do is, before I try to do anything, I just want to make sure that I can call this serve task. So I'm going to say serve task executed. Now I've saved it. I'm going to come back down to my terminal. And the way that I can call this serve task from the terminal, so I type in gulp, and then I type in serve. And you can see here that gulp is giving me some awesome information. It's saying using gulp file of projects, down cold gulp, gulp intro, gulp file. So this is the gulp file that we have been created, and that's because it's always going to look for the gulp file in the directory that you are currently in. So you want to run this gulp command inside of that. And I shouldn't say always, but that's the first place that it looks. There are ways that you can configure it to look in other areas for gulp files, but we're not going to get into that today, perhaps in another video. And then you can see that it's starting serve, so that's our gulp task. And then here's our console message, serve task executed, and then it says finished serve after 143 nanoseconds, or I don't know if that's a nanosecond or a microsecond. 143 microseconds would actually seem kind of long to me, but that's fine. So it could be nanoseconds, but I don't know. So that's how we can create tasks. Now, I had mentioned, well, that you can have multiple tasks. So let's go ahead and create a new task. And our new task is going to be not serve. Let's call it HTML. And I need to be inside that. Okay. This time we're going to console log HTML. So if I want to call the HTML task, I can just type in gulp HTML. You can see starting HTML, HTML, HTML. Fun. Alrighty. Now, I started all of this by talking about automatically serving or updating that browser. Let me show you how to do that. So here, I'm going to call the browser sync variable, and then you need to set some parameters, a configuration file, and I come over to the browser sync IO, I can find the documentation of how this needs to be configured to run with Gulp. And here you go. So we need this server property, which I created. And then inside that server property, we need to define what our base directory is. And I'm just going to come back over here. So server, which is an object, and we've got a base directory. Great. And let's just use this directory. All right. Now, let's see what happens. So again, small changes, and then we test it. So I'm going to come down here and let's test Volt serve, and there we go. It automatically just loaded up the gulp serve file. However, if I were to change my HTML file, you'll notice that the change didn't trigger a reload. So I had to refresh it again. That's not what we wanted. We wanted it to automatically refresh. So back in my GulpJS file, I can use one of the other gulp functions, which was gulp watch. And watch basically has three parameters as well. The first of which is something called a glob. I'll do another video on globs, but a glob is basically a file pattern matching system. So I can basically say wildcard.html. So whenever any file that ends in .html in this directory, do something. So that is the pattern match. So watch all HTML files in this directory. And then the second parameter is the same thing. I can have a list of tasks that I can call, or that's an optional one. I also can call a function directly. So I'm going to call browser sync reload. And now you can see down here I have this message from the previous time that I called gulp serve. And it basically said it's starting serve, it finished serve, and it's now running this browser sync, which gives me the URL that I can find my files at, so localhost 3000. So I'm just going to close out of this. And now I'm going to run gulp serve again. Okay, so that opened up our browser with our file. Let's see if our watch statement is working. So instead of danger, let's change this to is info. And you can see reloading browsers just triggered down here. And there is a new color. So now let me show this to you side by side. Whoops. So side by side, if I make it this change, so let's do is warning, and I save that, and you can see it automatically refreshed in the left side of the browser. You can also do, I don't remember all of the others. It's warning, danger, primary. So now you can see, and this is how I develop, is I want to have my gulp file running browser sync and then have my website open on the left, so that as I'm building it out, and every time I make a little change, I just save the file and then it will automatically update that file in the localhost 3000. I'm going to do another video on browser sync in the future because there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with browser sync as well. But for now, that's going to wrap things up for this morning. So thank you for watching, and I will record some more GulpJS videos because we've only scratched the tiniest surface of just